2012 to 2013, we concluded that study, and some of my colleagues here were part of that. That was an initiative by the Ministry of Education and Sports that assigned a group, the technical people, to conduct this study. With support from UNESCO, we conducted that, and I was part of that. So to bring our viewers on board, this study recommended majorly, so many things, but majorly 2 things that we have been discussing over these 5 weeks. One, it recommended that there was a need to develop the national teacher policy. This national teacher policy to address all the issues concerning the teachers. And this teacher policy is going to give a paradigm shift to overhaul the teaching profession, professionalize the teaching profession through this legal document. Amanda would like to...
Is it overhaul or to reform?
It is, yes, there have been so many issues concerning the teaching profession where they could not measure the standard. So if I use overhaul, it means turning everything and putting it right. That's because we did not have a legal document that controls the teachers. We did not have the national teacher policy for teachers for all those years. But this study helped us to unveil that actually there was need for one, because there are so many issues concerning the teachers, and all those issues are going to be addressed by the national teacher policy. The other recommendation was that they realize much as the teachers have issues that affect their profession, but they would also have the areas where they were lacking, where to voice their issues. They never had a platform. Therefore, the recommendation recommended that there would need to establish the teacher management information system for effective management of the teachers. And therefore, that's what we have been going through. Now, the specific objectives of the national teacher policy, one of them, it is streamlined the teacher management for better productivity, the discipline of the teachers, motivation of the teachers, and that is exactly what we have been looking at. Then the other one is to strengthen the pre and in-service teacher training in order to enhance the competences for the effective delivery of the teachers and leadership of our teacher institutions at all those levels. Then the other one is also we are looking at to streamline the teacher development, to standardize the teacher development, and then the qualifications at all the levels of our teachers. Then the last specific objective is to ensure cross-cutting issues are integrated in all the teacher training aspects. That is one of them. And the cross-cutting issues, one of them is what we have been talking about for these 5 weeks, and that is ICT integration, HIV integration, gender issues in education, special needs education, and these are issues that are part of this national teacher policy. So the ICT is what now gets into the teacher management information system. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Moses. Yes, we go to Award. You have been at the center of the TIMIS Teacher Management and Information System. So far, perhaps, how is it going? What is the response? Where are the challenges?
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, the viewers. We've been on it, and we are still on it. And teachers will come and go. So the exercise, as it has always been, is ongoing well. Teachers are still coming from the institutions. This registration is to license the teachers to operate. A teacher cannot operate in the country without being officially recognized by getting the certificate of registration. Though this initially was being done manually, but the system replaced that. So teachers have adopted ICT. All the teachers outside there, I would wish to thank you so much for really coming up to self-learn in some other aspects. Though a few challenges were faced depending on where a teacher is operating from. But since then, they have really adopted, and a lot of them have been registered. we keep guiding them. We keep giving remote support. We keep giving online virtual support. With the current surge that we have in COVID, teachers would have a very hard time to register with the ministry. But this system came before that, the time of COVID, and it has really worked well. Just imagine if we did not have TIMIS to handle this registration, and then teachers would be expecting to come to the ministry to officially do a manual registration. With this kind of situation we are in now, that would be a very, very difficult situation to handle. And yet you must get registered to operate. Would be having great challenge, but TIMIS online registration teachers came at extremely right time, though we did not predict that this situation would come in. So this will have to continue because teachers will have to still be recognized, and the situation will come to a normal one. Now, most of the teachers knowing that this is part of them online now, not as virtual, physical as they used to be. So teachers shall give them support always. We have our contact lines on the website of the TIMIS, and we are looking at now upgrading TIMIS, and very soon teachers will see more other components and sections of the system that they have not yet been seeing. Every registered teacher will now have an extra advantage to that effect to enjoy the online registration. So,
well, thank you. Yes, Kaboyo, we just want to look at you in the private sector, the private institutions. How do you come in? Where do you fit in? And what is going to be your role in the implementation of this policy?
Thank you, Mr. Cole and viewers. We don't have specific points or entry points where we fit. We fit in every strata of this policy. That this policy without us, it cannot go far. That this policy without the private sector, it cannot be very relevant on three fronts. One is that by law, the Education Act, Pre-Primary, Post-Primary Act, rests the provision of nursery education or early childhood education in the hands of the private service providers, meaning that they have control for the learners and also the teachers in that sector. The other fundamental principle is that at the secondary school level, the highest number of enrollment of learners is in the private schools, meaning that when you go to look at the enrollment in public and private, you will get more students in the private schools. The other fundamental principle is that teachers who teach in public schools also teach in private schools, and the reverse is true, meaning that coexistence and partnership has to be fully understood and interpreted using this policy, because this policy brings in issues of safety nets for regulation and to ensure that there is sanity in the delivery of education services within the private schools. But suffice to say, we are now in the second wave of COVID, and we have skepticism, or we are filled with a lot of paranoia that after the 10 days we may see HE the president address us and maybe lock us again. Depending on because the deaths are being manifested in newspapers, and we are getting to see the situation is worse. But the point I'm driving here is that when the lockdown looms and it's real, there has to be provision of food stuff to the teachers first this time. And when I talk about teachers, I'm talking specifically about teachers in private schools,
Private institutions, yes,
who spent a whole year plus without pay, while their counterparts in the public schools were getting their salary, and they also got the food supply. I'm speaking about this because we are on the national teacher policy, and I'm interested in the numbers. Because when you go outside right now and ask, by the way, Valentine, how many teachers do we have in nursery schools private? He might not have the answer. Then you ask Moses, how many teachers do we have in private schools? We might not have the answer. But my call as a leader from the sector is that when the food comes to be given, let's work with the office of Valentine to first provide numbers of those teachers that have registered under TIMIS, that for you to qualify for the posho and beans, you must have registered with TIMIS. And that one will be a requirement to increase registration online. So the issue of numbers, to ensure proper planning for our teachers in the private schools is very key.
Well, actually, Kawaya brings in a very, very interesting issue here, because some time back before ITEC merged with the UPK and UNICE to form Chambago University, that whoever had left NTC, the condition for upgrading and going to ITEC for a degree course after a diploma was that, one, you must have been registered as a teacher with the ministry. Secondly, you should have served a minimum of 2 years. So that means everybody was forced to practice, even if you didn't. That was the condition. Now, when you talk about teacher management and information system, is it all about teachers registering online, or you should even take interest in how the wife, the number of children, you see, in other words, where do they come from? The person, don't you think that also should be? Because it is a teacher managed information system. It's not Mr. Moses. Because actually he brings in a very, very critical issue here.
Let me answer.
Yes.
Moses will supplement.
Okay.
This teacher management information system.
Yes.
Not family management.
No. It is not about, because information, because everything about somebody, that's the information.
Yes. But here, it's like you are telling doctors to go to National Medical Council with all their siblings to register as a doctor.
You see, in medicine, when you go, they always look at the patient's history with the disease. And that's what I'm also looking at.
Now here,
it brings in a critical issue. Teachers in the public sector, they are not actually as hard hit as in the private sector. And all these are teachers who are teaching children of this country. So that is why he is saying that it is also very important to know how many are in the private sector. During such a pandemic, during such a crisis, what should be the strategic interventions of the ministry in saving teachers? Because ideally, we have no private child. They are all children of this country. They sit the same exams. And therefore, at such a time, because it is not going to help the country where when schools open and it's only teachers in public schools that can go back, when actually those in the private sector have actually lost interest in the profession. Yes.
Thank you very much for that analysis. I think you realize that when it came to the time of the government supporting the private teachers, and supporting them within this situation that we were going through, lockdown, you had that outcry. But we realized that it took time for their sector to identify that this is the rightful teacher that they need to support. Why? Because the way they have been operating, they don't have specific data that this is the rightful teacher that is deployed in this school, and school A has the other one, and school B has this category of teachers. Because they could deploy any category of teacher. Whether is so long as this person has finished senior 6, for example, and is a good mathematician, this person will be enrolled in a private school to support. Not necessarily that this person is trained. So if they have to go that the teachers who are trained, they are the ones that benefit, it became now a challenge. Because every school would declare that this is the number of staff that I have. But there was no clear data concerning the number of the teachers in the private sector. But even then, for us, the private, government, at least you could get the number. Because we have the payrolls, and all those on the payrolls could be identified per the school. That's why this TIMIS is now coming in to answer that gap. That can we have all the teachers be registered, and then the tracking in their private sector, you say, wow, the number of teachers we have in the private schools, primary, secondary, ECD, this is the number. That's where the government now would say, wow, could we go in our registry? TIMIS now will roll out and say, we want all these teachers. Do these are the rightful teachers that are qualified? That would be now the best solution. But right now, this is the solution.
Well, back to or because the issue here is getting interesting. There's a country I went to where actually teachers after 2 years are required to update their information in terms of advancement in academics, in terms of declaring their wealth, in terms also declaring their liabilities and burdens in case maybe you've added on 2 or 3 kids. So that information about teacher A or B is actually accurate. That once you say I'm Googling for Valentine or as a teacher, you can easily get that information. And I don't know, in TIMIS here in Uganda, what particular information are you looking out? What particular information is the teacher supposed to register? Or don't you think perhaps you need to add on more?
Now, to answer to answer you,
yes.
Teachers have to put key information that we ask from them.
Like?
Now, one of those is the date of birth, level of qualification, because we are licensing a teacher to operate. We need to know what is the maximum level of qualification of teacher A. Then we grade you at that level. We need to know where you're operating from. We need to know which district you come from. We need to know which school are you operating from. We need to know, are you operating in a private sector or a government sector? Very soon, we need to know, now, your NIN you provide will give us detailed information on you. Because if NIRA has this information, where you come from, when you were born, and all other details of your parents, their contacts, we at the Ministry of Education would look at as what we call in ICT as data redundancy. We are manipulating the same thing. So can we only request for your NIN, and if you want to go past that NIN information, we can get from NIRA. Remember, our systems are intercommunicating. So if I put your NIN, for instance, I'll get all other details I want from you. So it may not be okay for us to ask teachers to provide the information that almost NIRA asks them of. If we have the NIN, we connect NIRA and we get what information is really there. So as of now, because at NIRA they will not ask you what is your maximum level of qualification. But here, we want that, and we want your documents to prove that you went to school. At some registration systems, they may not ask that. Now, if they want to know, other entities within the government, if they also want to know key information about the teachers, then they come to us. Which information may also not be required at their end at a particular time when they're doing some background check about a specific teacher. So, you get key, what we call in database as a primary key. So when we get this simple information, simple key, we can get from the sister agencies specifically on what we want.
Yes, Mr. Kawayo, we just read in papers that about 1,000 actually schools at the verge of actually being perhaps taken off or sold off, and that means that there will be a lot of loss of jobs, actually, people being unemployed. So you as people in the private sector, how does the policy address such a thing, that in the event that there is such a pandemic where we're going to see that teachers in large numbers are going to lose their jobs, how should government come in here?
You see, Mr. Akol and viewers listening need to pray for this country. pray for the country that the pandemic has come to offer us lessons. But I think as a country we seem to be slow learners, or we need some remedial lessons to understand. I'm saying this because I'm so touched as a person in the sector that when schools were closed by the president on the 18th of March 2020, announcing that we should pick our sons and daughters from school on the 20th, we all moved in, picked the students. We knew that the lockdown was for 1 month, and it caught us unaware without proper planning. So the 1 month became 3 months. And we did a lot of work to ensure that at least a phased reopening is realized. Along that side, we were discussing to ensure that schools that have financial stress should be given support in terms of a stimulus package to help them. And for us, what we did as a federation of non-state education institutions, we carried out tools that we administered across the country among 1,600 schools, and we established the economic stress, we established the reorganization needs, we established those schools that have loans to pay, we established those schools that have a weaker infrastructure to progress.
Actually, teachers and schools,
Yes.
especially in the private sector, are choking on loans now.
Choking on loans, what did we do? We formally wrote to the Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development and copied the Managing Director, Uganda Development Bank. It's on record. Good enough, they took 6 months to respond to the issues we raised. Now this brings in issues of efficiency and effectiveness, because schools need to be assisted with timely intervention. So when they came to us, they requested us to submit a technical proposal. So the Federation of Non-State Education Institutions constituted a task force with key experts, and we developed a technical proposal that we gave to UDB some 3 months back. And in those meetings, because we had the structured meetings where there were players of nursery schools, primary schools, secondary schools, and tertiary. So they have the anxiety to look upon UDB to give the money. But as we speak now, the Minister of Finance or the President, I'm sure, has read that headline, should come so fast to rescue these schools using the available resources, because the banking model of commercial banks restructuring loans has remained not helpful, that very many schools have their interest rates increasing. Our office has written to a number of commercial banks asking for a grace period, hoping that this is going to end. But where it has reached, we can say as professionals that we are going to undress and move on the street and show the discontent, but we call upon the responsible ministries to dialogue with us and have protracted conversations to ensure that these teachers and schools have a secured future, a guaranteed system. Because if education system collapses, the country will have collapsed. And if private schools are left to be sold, those who will buy them will not offer the system that has been in those schools. And those who will buy them cannot be stopped from converting them to into rentals or lodges or poultry farms. So for us to maintain the original plan of an education system,
it requires a lot of reflection and thinking, not talking, bringing us to the television station. Or what we need are resources that are proportional to the school needs. You find school A has a loan of 50 million. School X has 2 billion. School Y has. We have that already with us. I think there should be a conversation, and where there is a problem without a conversation, as you said, you go to the medical doctor before he prescribes for you, you first converse.
Yeah.
Medical history. You explain,
yes.
then he gives the right medicine. Also, government should converse with us, and not a section, but all of us as players should be called on table
As stakeholders.
as stakeholders, including parents, by the way. Because in this, parents have their issues, learners have their issues, directors of schools have their issues, teachers have their issues. So those players have to be listened to, and their conversations processed into intervention.
Well, thank you very much. You know, what he says that at times certain things come as blessings in disguise, because this pandemic should tell us that whether the policy is holistic or it has some areas that it needs actually to be improved. Now, let's look at what are the priorities of the national teacher policy.
Yeah, thank you, Amanda. Just as you're saying, I can start at that note. This national teacher policy is not segregative. That's why it is called a national teacher policy.
Yes.
It is targeting all teachers, both in public and private.
No, it may, in ink, it may not be segregative, but when it comes to implementation, the implementation may.
Wow, that is why I say that this is a paradigm shift.
Oh, okay.
For teachers, it hasn't been there.
Okay.
That has been talking, and all what we are talking about. You know, there are so many challenges in the private sector, much as they are also in the public schools, but there are challenges more in private sector, because much as the policy is there, they try to divert and do otherwise. And it's the one who suffers the consequence is the teacher. Even this talking about the remuneration of the teachers, putting them the standards, that's why we are. And all those standards that are mentioned in this national teacher policy. By the way, this teacher policy has 3 areas. The teacher policy itself, the first part. The second part are the implementation standards that now finish to how do the teachers look at it and implement this national teacher policy and all stakeholders. Then it doesn't stop there. It also gives now the guidelines that follow the standards. That if you are effectively looking at the remuneration of the teachers, how do you handle it? Cutting across, whether public or private. So it is very, very comprehensive, and it is for the good, most even the private sector, because they have been suffering a lot. Coming to the priorities, and that's why the priorities are only 4, majorly. This is a summary. One is establishment of the National Teacher Council, and this by an act of parliament. And this council will be the regulator of the teaching profession. One, it will be taking in charge, how does it professionalize the teaching profession? That's the major aim of this national teacher policy. The council will now be the answer to regulate whoever is involved in the teaching profession, whether in private or secondary, because there is a standard that every teacher that will be allowed to teach must be registered, must be meeting the standard for the quality. Must be, now once you are registered, it means you are licensed. That will be your license. That's what our colleague, the expert, was talking about. That what makes now you the teacher. Now the private sector will be saying, no, are you registered as a teacher? That registration certificate will be acting as a license for you to be admitted into that private school. You see how it comes into now, into helping them, that the way they have been operating in the private schools, it needs to change. And it's for the good of this teacher that has been there. So this council will even be responsible for the registration of the teachers, registering them. Even in those that we talked about, the categories that are not on the TIMIS, they will be licensed. Do we need to license this foreigner? Maybe he has some unique areas that are lacking in our teachers. And this person has a rare skill or competence that needs now to be integrated in the teaching.
Yeah, for example, teachers of French, German, most of them actually for
those languages.
Yes.
So this teacher will be licensed, and it is the council that will be doing that. So the council will be responsible for that licensing of the teachers, and even will be responsible to register, to remove the teacher out of the registration role of the teachers. That major registration, it will be now when have you met the standards after 2 years, because there is a standard that after every 2 years the teacher must at least go for a CPD, continuous professional development course, and that must be accredited. So the teacher to be allowed to teach in any school or in an institution, given even the universities, those tertiary institutions, must be accredited that actually this is the teacher that measures, which formerly wasn't there. And now the teacher policy is emphasizing it. You see how we are moving into the paradigm shift, that the way things have been done, it is now changing. That's what the sector is looking at. The other one is the establishment of the National Institute for Teacher Education. UNITE. Whereby right now, I need to inform you that there is already a task force in place, and then it is the location is Shimon, which has been a core PTC, but now it is changing. That is the center now, and the task force is in place, and it is developing it. One of the responsibilities for it is to implement the continuous professional development. That is developing those programs, and right now they are developing programs. As I talk down there in the retreat in Entebbe, looking at those programs, how do they make these programs different from the way other programs have been developed? Because this is now CBET, competence-based approach of developing the programs. To take care of the lower secondary curriculum, when you look at it, is rich and it is calling for the skills, TVET skills, technical vocational skills, at every level a learner is able now to do something. So this institute will be responsible for doing that, developing programs, implementing the teacher management information system. They will also be now integrating all the cross-cutting issues in the programs. Then the other one is development and implementing the teacher standards, or standards for teachers or for the teaching, and then the leadership. Those standards are already in the policy, and those will be now responsible areas for UNITE. The other part, now the final one, is ensuring that cross-cutting issues are integrated in all the aspects of the teacher training. So those four priorities, when you unfold them, they make up the national teacher policy and what we are supposed to implement.
Well, let me come back to Kawayo. Because the policy talks about the establishment of the National Teachers Council. On the council, perhaps let's go through quickly the composition, and is there a voice for the private sector?
Definitely, there has to be a voice for the private sector. I've said there has to be, because as we speak, the principles of a composition for the teacher council are with the parliamentary drafters. I know at the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs there is the first parliamentary council, second parliamentary council. They are the ones charged with drafting these principles. But
no, doesn't the policy give like a framework of the composition?
The policy gives a framework, is broad. The policy is broad, but the details extrapolated from the policy is that act that should be able to spell on the composition of the council, that it could have the Honorable Minister of Education and Sports nominated individuals, might be players from the private sector. That is going to come when we specifically return here to discuss the content of the Teacher Act. Because the Teacher Act...
So do we have the Teacher Act in place?
The Teacher Act drafted, in draft, is with those key drafters that have to first do the cooking. I can say it is in the kitchen. Like in our homes, if I'm the head of the family, I'm not supposed to go to the kitchen to see what they are cooking. Has the water been properly measured? If I go there, I will have some issues.
Yes.
But in terms of this cooking of the act,
Yes.
those in the kitchen
Yes.
have to be asked, when is the food being served? And when this food comes,
Not only when, but also how.
how?
Yes.
Because then I was coming to that. Then I will ask, why is the salt so much? Did you go so much to Lech Katwe, or what did you do? Then we shall ask, what about representation? Is this food enough? Bearing in mind that when we prepare food at home, it's not only for the home people. You put eventualities for the visitors. If they popped, will they eat equally? We should not make this Teacher Act forgetting our history. That, for instance, the private sector player is not as old as the education delivered by the colonial masters. So we have just grown into this liberalization to offer a service, but we have had our own challenges of lacking support. And we might not ask for financial support to be in the law, but when you reasonably show our numbers in terms of composition, the voices will be meaningful in that council to ensure that the issues that affect education are not squarely blamed on us. You see, they will tell you private schools employ unqualified teachers. Private schools have ABC, but when
and one of the reasons
Yes.
is because the unqualified is cheap labor. And I can now see the ministry raising the bar, because I wonder whether we shall have enough private schools to pay a graduate.
We shall fit in the we shall fit the bar, because this policy is very clear to private schools operators that you will be required, you are required to give a teacher in your school a letter of appointment, specifically looking at 2 years of initial employment terms. To some who are watching us might see that as a concern, but this is policy and we cannot skirt about it. The other issue is that you are going to remunerate them accordingly, meaning that if a private school director has been operating a school like a kiosk, now it's time for you to style up, to up the game that the policy is demanding. And of course, if you want,
you either comply or you wind up.
And for us, we are saying that we are not going to cause the wind up. That's why we are carrying out the sensitization. There are those directors who have not read this policy. I will request Valentine to give them the website to do for us two things. One, to download the TISA report that worked to have this policy in place. Two, to download this policy and print it, to have it as key document in their offices. Why? Because people refuse change. They first deny, after denying, then they remain there, but they have to accept, they have to commit, because it is in good faith that the system is going to improve.
Well, thank you, Kaboyo. And yes, of course, what he's raising reminds me of the days of Fajr Monday.
Yes.
Because actually Fajr Monday would just walk in anytime.
He was an inspector when I
Yes.
was a deputy head teacher
in a school.
Yes.
And so, okay, can we sing the students' anthem?
Yes.
Okay, can we do this? Just like that. And everybody was forced because you didn't know when he's coming. Now, the other issue is, let's look at how the ministry is making it easier for teachers to know whether they have registered or perhaps to cross-check to look at their registration status. For example, NIRA came up with, helped people who were working with the telecom companies. They did that. They gave us codes that you can do and know exactly where. So, TIMIS, have you come up with such an arrangement to make it easier? At least every teacher has a phone.
And see but in approval.
Yes.
Because he knows the answer,
Yeah.
that the minister has done that. No, we find
The minister.
I first want to
Yes.
answer him.
Yes.
Then I get back to you.
Okay.
I might forget.
Okay.
He said I should give to our colleagues, the education owners or directors, the website where they can get this. If they cannot come to the ministry because of the lockdown to have this, the hard copy like this, they can go to the Ministry of Education website, which is www.education.go.ug, www.education.go.ug. So when you get there, you'll go to the section of downloads and you'll find files that he mentioned. One, the TISA report that recommended the coming up of the National Teacher Policy, and then this very National Teacher Policy document, which is in the soft copy. You can have them and take your time to read at the comfort of your zone and the living room. Then you can know exactly what the Teacher Policy is talking about. Back to you. Ministry has done a lot in trying to get teachers' feedback in real time and to make it very easy. Now, one, we have what we call helpline on the TIMIS website. When you go to TIMIS website, we have a section of contact us. At the Ministry of
You can hold on to your point because I wouldn't want us. I wouldn't want you to address a teacher in the urban center. Because when you talk about a website, it is only favoring a teacher in the urban center. I want you to look at a teacher in my village.
Which village is that? Then I will tell you.
A teacher, for example, in Kabong, where there is no, or down there where there is no electricity, where perhaps even if you talked about a computer, somebody would wonder whether it is a drug for crops or for animals. So this, but no, at least in those places, you'll find that a teacher can afford a phone.
I am wondering,
yes,
if that is the village and if that village exists, because one,
they do.
The current teacher I know of, or the current teachers, at least each has a smartphone. At least.
No.
Now, secondly,
I think you better do some research.
I did research, and he knows it. Secondly,
some are watching and listening to us.
Secondly, what I can tell you is for you to register, you must have an email address. Which email address is an instant communication from the system to you. So teachers get real communication at a click of a button on their account. Everything that happens on your account, the information comes to you instant, auto-generated by the system. We don't even send manual. Auto-generated with a reason, whether you've been approved or you've been queried, and with specific reasons.
Now, one maybe information I would want you to it should be food for thought. The teachers you're talking about, those are secondary school teachers, because most of them have gone through university or NTCs. But the primary and pre-primary teachers, actually most of them
apparently
do not have smartphones.
We are not only
because we are looking at all teachers.
All the teachers,
now the teachers you're also looking at are those at universities, the lecturers. But the majority of teachers are primary school teachers. Yes, actually 40% of the teaching force at primary. So it's that group. Actually not 40, it's 50%. It's that group I'm looking at.
You're looking at that group, and I can also tell you I have engaged with that group. Because I engage with these teachers day in and day out. And I can tell all the categories of challenges they have and how we address them. Now, if we look at primary teachers as though they cannot have real-time communication with the system, then we are getting it wrong. We have registered over 100,000 primary teachers. How did they succeed? And these teachers have certificates with them. How did they get? You get? That's what I'm telling you. We can reach to them and they can reach to us at instant. That's why they can afford to print certificates. They can afford to make corrections whenever there are challenges. Okay, whenever they are queried, they can do it instantly and they come back.
Yeah, what I can see, the discussion is getting interesting. I wish we would have more time.
Yes,
but I can see time is not our best ally. I would give each one of us a minute. We will begin with Moses so that we can really we can say bye.
Thank you very much. This has been interesting. But for our teachers, that's my concluding area, is that we have simplified it. And we have a system in the ministry, especially the teacher education department. We have the coordinating centers at the ground where the CCTs or the tutors at the colleges can reach these teachers. And now this is what we are saying. If that has been a challenge, we are letting you know that these services are near you. We have put them nearer to you. Go to any college or to your nearest CCT, who is always operating, supporting them in our system, that I need to get my information that is concerning me. We have at least trained them. They are now aware. They are the ones who distributed these books. Up, down, every head teacher, at least in a public school, has this copy. We are now following up them to continue the dissemination. Now, let you, the teacher, who is in Kabong, who is in Amodat, move, like for example, if I can go, Moroto, PTC. Nakapiripiriti. That teacher can move to Moroto Core PTC and access the services, the gadgets that are there. They can check because they have internet, they have what they can advise them on scanning, uploading, and even information that they need, they can use them. But mostly, where they can get this easily is through their CCTs, center coordinating tutors. And this information is can be got.
In a minute. Actually,
in a minute. I think this has been very interesting.
Yes.
I think today is our last.
Your last
yeah.
Yes.
But I'll say something.
This has been interesting, and we thank the teachers that have come up. We're there to support them in the case of any ICT-related challenge, and we are still working.
Thank you. Yes, Kawai.
Yes, to the colleagues in the private sector, let's have the 2 levels of change process, and we leave the first 2. We have resistance, we have denial, we have acceptance, then we have commitment. Let's accept and commit to downloading this policy, reading it alongside the TISA report. It has come to improve the education system, and we shall continue sensitizing the public.
I think 1 minute, Amanda.
Yes, maybe 30 seconds.
30 seconds, yes. Yeah. We have been on this program for 5, and this is the 6th week, and we are winding up. Our viewers who have been with us, the teachers and stakeholders, we thank UNESCO that has supported us. I've been coordinating this, and we thank UBC for all that time that you gave to us, and you have not skipped any program that we are scheduled with you. You have at least rescheduled for us to come. As I've been coordinating on the side of the Education Department and the Ministry of Education and Sports, we appreciate this. UNESCO, thank you very much. We shall continue to appreciate and upload your information and support.
I must thank you, very much. I and Patrick Kavoyo, who come from the mountains.
Yes.
That mountainous. You know, it is actually at times even the bridges are taken. The flood is washing them away. So that's why I say that the implementers of this policy, you should actually pick interest in every detail. We shouldn't play to the gallery so that it can work for everybody, so that no one is left out. Yes, I must thank you, Patrick Kavoya. I must thank you, Valentino Owor, and also Bateganya Moses for really coming and being part of this sensitization. How I wish that actually we get more sponsors or government comes up with another arrangement, because this policy requires constant sensitization, and what so far has been done, I think it is not enough.
Yeah.
Mandakolo Mazima is my name, saying bye-bye.
Thank you.